Good morning, everybody. My name is John Wyborn, and yes, we're going to talk about AVIT, technological electronic training, in the Superyacht sector. But before we do that, I need to tell you a little bit about me, which is quite important. I'm actually legally blind, which means I have basically no central vision. So it's a genetic thing. So the reason that's significant is that if I look at you, I'm not looking at you. When I see people and I talk to them, actually I can see the shoulders, but your head is basically a fuzzball, which I think is probably a shame because I'm a natural optimist. But that is what I do. So I train myself to look at roughly where I think your eyes might be in the fuzzball, because if I don't look you in the eyes, you don't believe the word I say. I won't make eye contact with you. So I've sort of trained myself to do that. The other problem, of course, is that I don't recognise people. So you may have seen me wandering around the gardens last night with a vapid half smile on my face, waiting for somebody to recognise me and come and talk to me. But that's how it is. I don't see. If you look at me and smile and say hi, and I return an ice-cold 1,000-yard stare, it's not because you've pissed me off. It's simply how it is. So you have to sort of wave and come up with. So every time I teach, I have to sort of go through a little script at the beginning so that people understand. So what are we going to do? I am involved in a company that does a range of different functions. I'm not here to sell the company. In fact, I'm not even going to mention the name of the company. Okay, it will not pass my lips. But my company, my personal side of the company is training. And what I've actually come here to do is to launch. There's quite an exciting new development that has taken place in that I'll explain who we is in a minute. We have created a training standard for electronic training of Superyacht crew. And I'm going to introduce that and talk about it in a minute because it affects all of you. Before I do that, we're obviously we're one of probably the major Superyacht training providers, but we're actually not very good. That's a strange thing for me to say, isn't it? I'm going to explain in a moment why we're not very good. But before we do that, I need to explain why I'm even here. Why am I launching a Superyacht technology training standard? Well, I do actually have qualifications in this. I have a degree in history and archaeology. And I spent a year at university studying the Anglo-Saxon language, which is very useful if you want to read books written in Anglo-Saxon. So why am I here presenting this paper? Well, of course, the Greeks and the Romans did invent technology in the first place. So with my considerable historical perspective of technology, I did actually write the first draft of the document that we're launching today. Now, as you can imagine, it fell a bit short of what was needed. But then a rather strange thing happened. I suddenly got a lot of help and a lot of engagement from AVIT companies. And actually, it became rapidly very clear that there is a screaming need for this and that it needs to happen. I started thinking about this, it was my nephew that started me off thinking about this because he actually is an AVIT officer on a 55-metre on rotation, which is handy because his wife just had a baby. It's becoming more and more common, but he went down that career path because through a colour blindness, he couldn't he couldn't work in the deck department, so he chose the AVIT route. But there's no training, there was no structured training. He made it up as he went along. And I remember thinking at the time, this can't be right. There must be, surely, for something as important as Superyacht technology, because it's so important in our industry, there's got to be something better than this. So we did start talking about it, and during lockdown, we had the first meeting in Zoom. There were about 50 people in the room. Merchant Navy Training Board were there, Maritime Skills Alliance in the UK, and lots of people there were captains, chief engineers, lots of people from Superyacht tech companies. And it became overwhelmingly clear that we needed to do something to get it going. So we did. And subsequently, we had smaller meetings with smaller groups of people who came in and helped to refine the projects. And I'm going to talk about that in a moment. But first of all, I want to explain to you why it's important and why we're so rubbish at crew training. So I'm going to put it in context. So it does get relevant. Does anyone know what a ship's cook certificate is? Have you ever heard of it? Yeah. It's an international requirement. Yeah, if you work on a commercially operated vessel and you have more than 10 crew, you are required, somebody on board must by law have a ship's cook certificate. Do you know what the ship's cook certificate actually means in practice? Anyone? It means you can cook food without killing someone. That's literally what it means. Now, it's very popular with Superyacht chefs because it's 10 crew or more. They all want to get the ship's cook certificate because that makes me a big yacht chef. But in terms of actual practicalities, it is a basic protection for crew. They don't even care about the owners and the guests. It means that you are going to not kill the crew. They're not fussed about the owners and the guests. This is legislation to protect crew. Now, I think you will agree with me, if you've ever eaten on a super yacht, that the crew are rather talented. Not only are they rather talented at not killing people, they produce extremely high quality food out of a galley the size of the spice cupboard in most of the Michelin star restaurants, and they do it 4 times a day, and then they probably do their own washing up, and then they have to cook chips at 4 o'clock in the morning. So there is, I think you'll agree, a considerable mismatch between the qualification and the reality of the job on board. And that is why what we're doing is so important. Can anyone tell me what STCW stands for? Anyone know? Somebody must know. It stands for Standards of Training and Certification for Watchkeepers. It's an international convention set up by the IMO in London, and it's basically to create standards for maritime training across the whole industry. Okay? So if you walk around in Antibes or Palma or wherever, you'll hear crews say, have you done your basic training yet? One of the courses that comes out of the SDCW convention is 4-element basic safety training. And people have this idea that it's some sort of mystical transubstantiation takes place when you do the basic training course, turning you from a landlubber into a seafarer, and you can then work at sea. What does it actually mean in practice? It means you can work on a commercially operated vessel at sea with a slightly reduced chance of killing yourself or somebody else. It's a very basic level of training for working on board at sea. Now, I'm not saying it's not important, it's very important, but it is basic. The STCW convention actually deals with qualifications for masters, qualifications for chief engineers, across the whole gamut. But do you know what it means to have a master unlimited STCW certificate? It means you can navigate a ship around the world without bumping into ship. That is literally what it means. It is not a high-level qualification. It is the basic minimum that is required in order to achieve it. So STCW is important, but it's actually the training that's important, and the training doesn't guarantee that you're going to be successful. HMS Nottingham hit very well trained, very high level of training in the Royal Navy. HMS Nottingham hit a perfectly well charted island in the Southwest Pacific Ocean in the early noughties. Just one of those things. What's it called? Yes, it's Australia. That's what it's called. It was very embarrassing. It had to be lifted back to the UK on a low loader, and in fact, the cost of repairing it, really, it should have been a constructive total loss. But I think they were a bit embarrassed to scrap the whole ship, so they rebuilt it. But the point is, training doesn't guarantee that you're not going to have accidents, but it's the mentality that goes with it that actually matters. There is a qualification for electrotechnical crew on superyachts. It's called the ETO, Electrotechnical Officer, the ETO qualification. It's an STCW qualification. You see where I'm going with this? It is not, I'm an ETO, I've reached the pinnacle. STCW is not a magnificent gold standard. STCW is the basic minimum. It is the least you should expect. The fact that there are ships and management companies and whole countries that do not conform with STCW is frankly jaw-dropping, because it is a minimum standard. So the ETO qualification, if you want to call yourself a yacht ETO, you have to have the STCW qualification. But as I think you can see, this is not a gold standard qualification, because like all STCW qualifications, it doesn't take into account, and this is why we have a problem with our training, is because all of the training that we do in our company and all of the other yacht training companies, all of the training that we do is based upon the STCW standards, and those standards are minimum standards. And in the superyacht industry, we ought to be aiming for a bit more than minimum. So I've got a real problem about this. There's a word in the English language which is, in my view, the most offensive word in the English language. It begins with C. Anyone know what it is? It's not the Anglo-Saxon word, the one-syllable Anglo-Saxon word that you're thinking of, because there's nothing wrong with that word. It was used by Shakespeare, it was used by Chaucer, perfectly respectable word. No, this word I'm thinking of is a Ponzi Latin, multisyllabic Latin word that begins with C, and it's compliance. Compliance is a cancer. It creates the illusion of safety, but it actually doesn't mean anything. It's tick box mentality. There's a yacht in Antibes which has a rescue boat, beautifully designed by one of the UK manufacturers. The rescue boat sits under a cover, hydraulically controlled cover. It's designed to pick people up out of the water from unmovable. In order to use this boat, you have to pick the crane up, 2 people, slot it into a thing in the deck. You have to pump it up. You have to this all has to be done within 4 minutes, by the way. Launch it over the side, and so somebody came on board with a tick box and said, "You have a rescue boat. You can launch underway." The fact is that equipment should never be used if the yacht is at sea, let alone in rough weather. So it's this is what I mean by compliance mentality. We need to look beyond that and look at the realities of the job on board. And this is the way that there is a trend in maritime training which is moving in this direction. And what we're doing, and we in this room are in a position to lead the way with this, because we are in a position now to actually look at the job on board and create training that's relevant to the job on board. So the standard that we're launching today, it became rapidly apparent. I was talking to, I think it was Gemma Sanders at AVIT. She was one of the people in the group. And she said, one of the problems that we have is that when there's a problem on board and we phone the crew, we can't even have a conversation with the crew because they don't have a language. They don't know what anything is called. We can't even begin to, if we could actually have an intelligent conversation with somebody knowledgeable the other end, we might be able to sort things out without actually physically going there. One of the other AVIT providers once said to me that he sent an engineer all the way to the Eastern Med from Antibes to solve a problem at considerable expense. And when the engineer got there, the most junior stewardess on board had solved the problem because she read the instructions. So the owner was happy, but there was obviously quite a bill. So the standard that we're launching it became obvious that actually it's not about training the AVIT officer. What it's about is actually training the crew in general about what they're doing. Are you winding me down, Jack? I know. So we decided there were 3 levels. Level 1 is for all crew. Every crew member should do this training. So the standard has been written in terms of learning outcomes and learning objectives. The learning outcome is what you want globally for the learner to be able to understand and do at the end of the course. And the learning objectives break that down into the actual individual steps that you need in order to achieve it. So that's the main learning outcome for level 1. I think Two people deserve particular mention, I think, in helping to create this standard. There were lots of people who really helped. Two people in particular, Scott Malloy, who is here, I think. Are you here, Scott? What's your company called again? Superyacht Electronic Academy. Liverpool. Put a lot of effort into actually putting the meat on the bones of this standard. And the other guy is Mark Witt, who's sitting there, who used to work for Techman, Superyacht company, and before that connection to Rockler. He's owned some sort of electronics, chip type chip. But he actually is, because he's much more on the networking communication side, added a lot of value on that side. So what we've actually got here is a document defined in terms of learning outcomes and objectives at 3 levels. Level 1 is for all crew, every crew in all departments at the most junior level, to ensure that there is a baseline of knowledge. Oh, pushed the wrong button. Level 2 is actually the most important course. So this came out of David Savage's presentation yesterday, because actually most yachts don't have ETOs. And so what we're thinking for level 2 is that it's aimed at somebody on board of any department. Could be the interior department, could be a decky, could be in the engineering department, could be the captain, could be the chief engineer, it doesn't matter. Somebody on board who wishes to deepen their understanding of, and this is quite an involved level. There are practical skills involved, there's a lot of theory involved. It's designed, it could be, how it's taught is up to the training provider. It can be done in a classroom, over whatever time, or it can be done online. But it's supposed to be reasonably meaty so that somebody on board has enough knowledge to actually have an intelligent conversation with you guys. And level 3 is basically the foundation learning for somebody who wants to call themselves the AVIT officer. We've drafted level 1 and level 2. We haven't started really with level 3, because in a sense that's the least important one. So this is the document that already exists, and in the remaining time that I've got left, which is none, I need to explain to you why this is actually going to work. The stars are aligned to make this happen. There's an organisation called IARMI, which I'm involved with, the International Association of Maritime Institutions. This is an organisation of, basically it's an association for training providers. All of the serious yacht training providers are part of it, including all the nautical colleges in the UK. That organisation has a platform built by a locally based tech company called Navisign, actually, who are based here in Barcelona, which is a platform for hosting and running exams. So the exams that we produce can be independently marked under the auspices of IARMI. I'm currently the president of MEBA, which is an association of yachting companies. I'm the first MEBA president who's not a broker. So I'm trying to bring and take the education message into that organisation. At the Monaco Yacht Show, MEBA, CBAS, IARMI and the other providers and the other yachting associations all agreed to get together to form an alliance. It's going to happen, and this type of standard will sit within the context of that alliance. So the last thing I want to say is, if you are a Superyacht tech company, please go outside right now and talk to Fergus and get this steering council going, because it absolutely is needed. We all need to talk to each other, and we need to provide one voice for the outside world. So please, if you're a tech company, go and talk to Fergus. Please make this happen. If you're a management company and you're not already a member of MEBA, please come and see me. Please come and join, because for exactly the same reason. This is going to happen. The infrastructure is there, but I need your help. There's nothing in this standard, for example, about cyber security. Why is that? Any ideas?
Already required.
No, it's because I've got a degree in history and archaeology. And the Greeks and the Romans didn't give a shit about cyber security. But actually, it needs to be in there at all 3 levels. Does anyone in this room know anything about cyber security? Come and see me. Yeah, we need this document needs to be finished, and it needs to be finished by you. It's going to make a difference to your companies, because the level of IT familiarity of crew across the board will be raised. It's an example of training that's actually relevant to the job on board, and it is a revolutionary development. The whole of maritime education and training is going this way, but we're going to be first. And I'd better stop ranting now, or Jack's going to. Thank you for listening.